Everything you once believed about economic stability is being thrown into turmoil, as recent events have exposed cracks in the foundations of American leadership. The promises made to reassure the nation seem distant now. In February 2025, the unemployment rate reached 4.1%, marking an unsettling rise from the previous month. This figure may appear small, but it cuts deeper than anticipated, illuminating underlying vulnerabilities. Financial analysts projected a 4.0% unemployment rate, yet the reality proved worse. Many citizens, bracing themselves for a positive outlook, instead confronted a job market less robust than officially portrayed. A mere 151,000 jobs were created, significantly falling short of the 170,000 expected. These numbers mirror a slow creep in economic lethargy, leaving job seekers disenchanted by unfulfilled promises. Alarming layoffs have also hit public agencies. The Social Security Administration announced a reduction of 7,000 employees, and the Department of Veterans Affairs is cutting over 88,000 positions, compounding national anxiety. Despite these statistics, Donald Trump boldly proclaims, "The job market is going to be fantastic." Yet the gap between his words and the visible data causes widespread confusion about how this prosperity will materialize. This gap extends beyond employment. His environmental agenda has sparked equally serious concerns. Statements like cutting down trees is the right way to prevent wildfires reveal an unsettling disregard for expert advice. Environmental groups insist that targeted ecosystem management is crucial, while the administration slashes wildfire management funds. Tree removal alone, they argue, does not solve the underlying climate factors fueling major fires. Critics question whether these measures really prioritize public safety, or if they serve corporate interests eager to profit from logging. For many, it's yet another sign of a policy adrift in contradiction. Meanwhile, trade relations with Canada deteriorated rapidly when Trump imposed heavy tariffs on imports from America's largest trading partner. Officials claimed this would protect U.S. industries, but it ignited an immediate backlash. Canada responded with equally tough tariffs on American steel, aluminum, and crucial farm exports. Even more surprisingly, Ottawa accelerated new trade pacts with Europe and Asia, insulating its economy from U.S. pressure. Suddenly, American firms found themselves grappling with soaring raw material costs. Gas prices climbed, supermarket shelves reflected steeper costs, and consumers questioned how much deeper they would have to dig into their wallets. Manufacturers that rely on Canadian resources are struggling to meet profit targets. Everyday buyers, already burdened by rising inflation, feel these ripple effects at the gas pump and the checkout counter. Trump's public statements, however, rarely address these tangible hardships. Instead, they celebrate a supposed economic boom and dismiss escalating prices as trivial disruptions, creating a stark disconnect between rhetoric and reality. His ongoing trade rift with China has only exacerbated matters. Higher tariffs on Chinese goods were supposed to spur domestic manufacturing, but production expenses ballooned, forcing companies to pass extra costs onto consumers. Retail giants including Walmart and Target warn of increased prices on everyday items, from electronics to clothing. Small businesses, which lack the safety nets of corporate giants, bear these cost surges more heavily. Once hailed as a key measure of Trump's success, the stock market now shows signs of fatigue. Investors wary of trade wars, volatility, and rising interest rates have pulled back, triggering market slides. Yet the administration insists these downturns are healthy for America, an abrupt pivot from previous boasts about record-breaking market highs. This contradictory stance leaves the public struggling to understand the administration's true economic vision. Tensions also mount around government expenditures. Trump claims to be cutting wasteful spending, yet the numbers paint a different picture. Essential social programs shrink even as other allocations balloon significantly. Under Trump's watch, the national debt has surged past $35 trillion, a jump of $3 trillion since his new term began. Government revenues struggle to keep pace, and interest payments weigh heavily on the budget. Though defense spending has climbed by 8%, the administration has repeatedly cut the IRS budget, undermining tax enforcement that could recoup billions in unpaid obligations. Critics wonder who gains from these skewed priorities. Many suspect the wealthy elite stand to benefit as corporate tax cuts widen the wealth gap. Meanwhile, ordinary households struggle to navigate a precarious economy marked by financial strain and diminished support. Adding to the turbulence are Trump's falling approval ratings. A recent Economist poll shows him at 46% approval and 48% disapproval, marking a notable decline and indicating widespread dissatisfaction with current policies. Young voters especially are turning away. Once a strong demographic at 50% support, their approval has plummeted to 39%. Rising costs, uncertain job prospects, and polarized rhetoric have alienated much of this generation. Analysts warn these slipping ratings could become irreversible if economic and diplomatic challenges remain unaddressed. Americans are seeking real solutions, not more grandiose claims that fail to match day-to-day experiences. On the world stage, European allies grow wary of Trump's secretive talks with Russia concerning Ukraine. They feel sidelined in decisions that directly affect regional security, prompting them to rethink their reliance on U.S. leadership. In response, European nations have begun developing more robust defense cooperation, independent of Washington. They fear Trump's unpredictable policy maneuvers could leave them vulnerable in future global conflicts. France, in particular, has spearheaded new military and strategic agreements, attempting to shield Europe from the volatility of Trump's abrupt shifts in foreign policy. NATO's balance seems shakier than at any point in decades. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has publicly declared that Ukraine will not accept any agreement on its sovereignty made without its participation. Trump's dismissive tone only amplifies Ukrainian apprehension over potential compromises. Diplomats warn these fractures might permanently alter global alliances. If the U.S. continues forging secret deals and adopting isolationist stances, longtime partnerships could realign in ways unimaginable a few years ago. Within the U.S., families battle rising rents, ballooning food prices, and minimal wage growth. Medical expenses remain daunting, and the middle class feels squeezed as everyday necessities grow more elusive. Trump's tax incentives heavily favor corporations, contributing to a broader wealth divide. Middle and lower-income households see minimal relief, with many expressing frustration about who exactly reaps the benefits of his policies. Even some former supporters sense a betrayal of core promises. The lofty pledges of a fantastic job market fade each time a factory shutters or government office announces significant staff cuts. Trump has pivoted toward stoking the extremist dark MAGA movement, claiming it's the antidote to socialist encroachment. This rhetoric alarmingly amplifies division, as opponents argue it distracts from tangible economic woes. He frames dissenting voices as part of a vast left-wing conspiracy, urging supporters to resist censorship and donate to his cause. Yet these pleas do little to address the desperation many Americans feel. Observers contend that fanning cultural battles merely diverts scrutiny from Trump's economic missteps. While the population wrestles with higher bills, the debate over dark MAGA intensifies partisan lines rather than offering feasible solutions. The nation finds itself at a crossroads. Political splits deepen, living costs spike, and alliances falter abroad. It's unclear whether a turning point is near or if this uncertainty will drag on. International investors have taken notice, reducing commitments in an economy beset by unpredictability. Rising interest rates and shaky markets only reinforce the notion that traditional U.S. economic leadership is no longer guaranteed. European economies are hedging against American volatility by forging new deals and focusing on self-reliance. China, seizing the moment, expands its influence, setting standards in technology and manufacturing while the U.S. grapples with discord. Meanwhile, the brunt of these miscalculations falls on regular Americans. Wages haven't kept up with spiraling prices, and those newly unemployed or laid off from public agencies face mounting uncertainty about their futures. No swift remedies appear on the horizon. With trade wars raging and federal relief programs trimmed, many families are left alone to cope with market shocks and vanishing job security. Trump once promised a rejuvenated era for American labor, claiming he would reverse stagnant wages and bring back manufacturing. Instead, the formidable headwinds of trade disputes and rising costs have dampened such hopes. Deflecting accountability, Trump often blames Democrats for impeding his grand plans, though Republicans controlled significant levers of power for crucial stretches. Evidence suggests that the root issues stem largely from chaotic policy decisions. Disillusionment is spreading. Once believing workers have witnessed shuttered factories, small businesses weighed down by tariffs, and communities that feel more marginalized than ever, despite the pledge of renewed prosperity. In a bid to retain a solid base, Trump's latest fundraising emails evoke imagery of impending doom, warning of left-wing plots. He urges supporters to contribute financially, promising to champion their cause. He ties these pleas to dark MAGA, suggesting that extreme loyalty will rescue the nation from globalist forces. Many critics see this tactic as a manipulative ploy to weaponize frustration. By playing on divisions, Trump risks further polarizing society. Instead of addressing the tangible crises in housing, employment, and healthcare, he invests in fiery speeches that reinforce ideological boundaries. In Canada, Trump's once cordial relationship has soured into a full-blown trade dispute. Over 88,000 public sector layoffs in the U.S. compound fears that retaliatory measures from allies could deepen the economic strain. European nations watch the chaos, wary of entangling themselves in Washington's next unexpected move. Fresh bilateral trade agreements and defense strategies might offer them stability without depending on Trump's unpredictable approach. Voters at home grow weary. Many say they can no longer afford to see vital social programs cut, while new trade policies push up prices on essentials. Their patience has worn thin. The shifting global landscape suggests an era of realignment, where old partnerships morph into new alliances beyond American control. Even historically close allies no longer place blind faith in U.S. leadership. As housing costs soar, grocery bills balloon, and medical expenses escalate, everyday life becomes a struggle. People question how, in a supposed economic boom, they find themselves in ever-deepening financial distress. Further complicating matters is the administration's environmental stance. By prioritizing deforestation and easing regulations, critics say Trump jeopardizes long-term ecological stability while awarding contracts to powerful logging interests. There is little evidence that these measures genuinely reduce wildfire risk or protect vulnerable regions. Instead, they seem aligned with short-term industrial gains, leaving local communities in peril. For those wrestling with job insecurity, these contradictions sharpen the sense that Washington is drifting from its obligations. The administration's mixed messages on growth and governance leave many feeling unsupported. Globally, European defense realignments and Canadian trade shifts speak to a world adapting without waiting for the U.S. to refocus. Nations are securing their own interests, forging alliances less reliant on Trump's good graces. Questions arise as to who will champion middle-class Americans if the administration continues to pivot away from meaningful domestic policies. Each new day seems to deepen the uncertainty overshadowing possible solutions. Decades of international credibility cannot be rebuilt overnight. Reversing a tangled web of tariffs, mistrust, and political animosity will likely require significant effort from whichever leaders follow in Trump's wake. Some Americans wonder whether these economic and diplomatic strains are now an inescapable feature of national life. With political dialogue dominated by polarizing movements, reversing course seems increasingly difficult. At this juncture, the question remains, how long can the nation endure empty assurances, spiraling debt, and fractured alliances before demanding concrete change? It's a dilemma that may define America's future for years.